Well, I began using pre-exposure prophylaxis, also known as PrEP, on July 19th, 2011. This was after having come out as gay in the early 1990s in San Francisco, which was a time when knowing people with AIDS meant losing people with AIDS. And I understood very early how crucial the condom message was and how crucial condoms were in preventing HIV. But as time went on and as more effective treatments became available, I noticed that my own sexual practices had changed somewhat. My consistency with condom use had changed somewhat. By 2011, as a long-term relationship came to an end, as I was turning 40, I was starting to have those thoughts like, well, if I became HIV positive right now, that wouldn't be the thing that would take me out. There's a lot of other risk factors in my family for cancer-related illnesses, and I just didn't think and don't believe that HIV would be the thing that's going to knock me out if I were to get it. And I realized that that was the kind of relationship to HIV that a lot of friends and clients had before they became positive, that HIV and AIDS began to be considered a when, not an if. And I understood the danger of that perception and that relationship to AIDS and HIV. So around that time, I started to learn about the results of the PrEP study. This was in the first half of 2011. I came right here to GMHC, learned a whole bunch about PrEP, about the what was at that time understood to be 92% efficacy of PrEP, and had a discussion with my doctor about that. I told him why I believed I was at risk for HIV, and I told him my concerns about my perception of HIV, about my own behavior changing, and that I thought this would be the right intervention for me. Gratefully, thankfully, he agreed and said, yeah, this is the right thing for you, and that is when I started using it. Well, there is absolutely a stigma for people that are open about having condomless sex. Now, we know from studies, and I know from my own personal experience, that about 90% of sexual encounters are condomless, but there is a stigma and there's a lot of shame and fear about talking about that openly. It's one of the dirty little secrets in the gay community right now, because a lot of people who are also having condomless sex will judge their friends who are open about having condomless sex. When I first began using PrEP, I wasn't using condoms consistently the way I had in the many years prior. But when I began using PrEP, I still used them sometimes in conjunction with condoms, because I still had a hard time wrapping my mind around the possibility that this thing was for real. So I wasn't always using condoms, but I still did sometimes. I am going to honestly say that my experience of using condoms ended about 1.5 years ago with partners. That's with partners I know, partners that I don't know so well. I get in some trouble for saying that, but I don't care. Because it's real and it is my experience. I am HIV negative, I have not had an STD, and I do have condomless sex with people who I have sex with. The science is there. What we haven't had, there's no national platform in the US that's talking about this. The larger political organizations like the Human Rights Commission or GLAAD or the Gay Lesbian National Task Force, they're not talking about this. They're kind of washed their hands off AIDS and HIV issues, period. So they could be potential sources of discussion, but they're not having it. Most of our national organizations around HIV and AIDS are all dealing with treatment, which is really, really important, and advocacy for access for people who are positive to medicines, and that is so important. But they're not really talking about this either. So the information, the limited information most people have, has been somewhat scattered, somewhat piecemeal, and it's not really been organized or presented with the type of authority and continuity and evidence that I've had the pleasure of seeing, that I share with other people on my Facebook group, which is called PrEP Facts, Rethinking HIV Prevention and Sex.